choosing a career is one of the most difficult decisions in one's life. And it's even more so for this generation who have a plethora of options to choose from. But when you make this choice, after this begins the race of getting into one of the top schools and colleges of the country. But is it enough to look at the rank of one college? What is the actual mantra for becoming successful in choosing a career that works for you? And what is the path that one should choose? Well, to answer all of these questions and a lot more, we have with us today Mr. Pratham Mittal from Masters Union and Vijay Gogoi from KPMG. So today we will discuss and try to understand what is it that we are lacking? Why is it that even qualified graduates are not ending up with the careers that they want? So Pratham, my first question to you is, essentially if I'm a student who's done an MBA, I know I want a certain kind of career. I see it panning out for me. Why am I not able to sort of land myself a job that I set out in my vision?
I think there are three gaps that could possibly exist that are preventing people from scoring the jobs that they truly deserve or want, right? So I think first is, of course, very clearly that there's a large skills gap, right? If I want a job in finance or if I want a job in marketing, do I have the background to justify to the interviewer that I am fit for this job, right? Now, skills come in various shapes and sizes, right? So do I have actual work experience in that? If I don't have work experience, have I done curriculum that is attuned to the kind of work that will be required from me? If I have done some sort of work, am I able to showcase that work in a way to the interviewer that convinces him or her that, hey, okay, this person will be right fit for the job? So first is, of course, am I able to communicate the skills or whether I even have the skills to the... Second is, in India, and this is sort of pandemic to India, is the communications gap. So a lot of our graduates might be capable, but they're not able to communicate that they're capable, right? And that could either be because their English is not as is good, or they're not comfortable with expression. It could be that they don't have the confidence. They might have good, they might be writing well, but they're not able to, project that with confidence. Or simply that they don't have sort of the expression. We see this a lot with core engineering fields, right? So when you're a mechanical engineer, you're really good at what you do. And once you're on the field, you can actually do a good job. But in the interview, you just get nervous, right? So I think these are the 2 or 3 sort of reasons why repeatedly we have seen over the last 2 decades that Indian graduates have a very low success rate when it comes to interviews.
Right. And these are graduates that we're talking about the top colleges of the country as well. So these are not just, we're not talking about largely all graduates. This is probably the cream of the country. Do you think that applies to them as well?
So the one was a skills gap, right? I think the skills gap applies to perhaps the middle of the pyramid, right? And the communication gap, I think, applies to the top of the pyramid. Let's not even talk about the bottom of the pyramid because those people are not even going to college. Our gross enrollment ratio in India right now is less than 30%.
Right.
That means if 100 people are graduating from class 12, only 30 are going to college.
Right.
So out of those 30, the bottom 20 have a skills gap because our colleges don't do a great job. And the top 10, where the colleges cannot be blamed, I think it's the communications because, the reason, so at top schools, when you enter those top schools, you're not checked on your English and grammar, you're checked on physics, chemistry, math, right? And so because of that, in those formative years when you're between 16 and 18, where you don't take any classes in English because you're focused on PCM, I think that's where you lose it out.
And that sounds very scary because this essentially means that I could graduate from, like, say, an IIT and IIM, and I will still not get the job that I want. That essentially, I mean, it translates.
It's very interesting. If you graduate from NIT, IIT, you will get some job, right? But is that the job that you truly deserve?
And want.
I mean, think about it. This year was the first year where we started saying that, hey, IITians are cracking, 1 crore, 2 crore jobs. I think that should have been the case 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Or that should be the case for 10 times more students. India is a growing economy, right?
Right.
And I feel, it's too little too late.
Yeah. Vijay, my question to you is, you are at the receiving end of this. When these are the graduates who come and seek jobs from you. So when you're hiring these people, what is the gap that you see? What is that you see that, even in a IIM graduate, for instance, what is it that you want for a professional working for you that these people lack?
See, when we hire, and I completely agree with what Pratham was saying, that the communication skill gap is there. but I would just go a little bit beyond. It's not just communication skills, it's also some of the other softer skills that are required. For example, when we hire, we do want people who can think in a structured fashion. Right? We want people, even if it's from IIMs or any other B school, we want people who can communicate in a structured way. Your English may be very good, but you may be all over the place, right? So those are very critical skills that are required. We definitely look for that. We also want people to think for themselves and come up with their own opinions. At an entry level, we are not. Ideally we would want a lot of skills in a certain area, but we understand people are just starting out. They may not have everything, and it's okay, right? But yeah, the softer aspects is definitely an area where we can work on.
And also, now that I'm asking this question to you, I think it's something that we have all wondered, and we've all seen both sides to this, to both the answers, the possible answers. How important is a degree? The name, I mean, of course, not the degree, I mean, where the degree is from. How important, I mean, can you be a brilliant individual and not from an IIM? Or is an IIM really important? And IIM here is just an example.
See, the degree, if you go to any company today, a degree is important. Right? Important because degree gives a basic, I would say, a minimum criteria, a standard way of saying that, okay, this person has a certain level of understanding, certain level of skill, etc. Right? So I would say degree is definitely very important. Now, have we seen people with not so great degrees but brilliant people? Absolutely, yes. We have seen that, and we have seen people with very good degrees but very mediocre in their performance. Both ways we have seen, but I think as a basic, I would say, hygiene factor, a degree is required.
No, but does it matter where that degree is from, or a bright individual with an MBA, say, from anywhere is as good?
I think a degree from a very good college gives you a stepping stone, but beyond that, I think it does not matter too much.
But it does make a difference in an interview.
Yeah, it does make a difference. Definitely makes some difference in an interview, but that's just the initial I would say starting out position.
Right.
After that, it doesn't really make a difference.
So Pratham, I feel you with Masters Union have tried to sort of bridge this gap a little, sort of understand what the industry needs and structure a course that sort of meets that. So if you can tell a little about that, and also when you are dealing with these students, and when, I mean, it's also sort of very disruptive of sorts, right? Because there's a structure in which MBAs are done. Right. How then does Masters Union, what is it that it's bringing to the table?
See, when we started off, we knew that we are not coming with an IIM tag, right? So it wouldn't be the case that recruiters would just flock to us, right? And so when we went to KPMG, they're like, who's Masters Union, right? So what we had to do was really stand our students out when it came to skills, right? What we realized is that even the top institutions are not imparting real hard skills to their students, right? And more often than not, it's left to the students to sort of build those skills up themselves once they go into the workplace, right? So what we tried to do was essentially what happens in a medical college, right? In a medical college, first of all, it's situated right next to a medical hospital, right? And it's the actual medical doctors who come and teach, right?
It's very hands-on.
Right. Second, it's hands-on, but first, it's not academics or professors who are teaching, it's real doctors who are doing surgeries in the morning and teaching in the evening, right? And because of that, the teaching is hands-on. So if the practitioner is teaching, he's not going to refer to a book, or he's not going to make you take an exam or listen to a lecture, right? He's going to teach you what he practices in the morning.
Yeah.
Right? So what we said was, if we just create a curriculum which is completely led by practitioners, CEOs, MDs, CMOs, right? So just to give you an example, one of the initial marketing courses at Masters Union is taught by the Chief Marketing Officer of Samsung. And he talks about all of his product launches, right? This was the product launch we did, what were the metrics, what was the budget, what worked, what didn't, right? So the case studies essentially come alive in front of you, right? And I think we did that with every course.
Yeah.
So the courses that we teach are not all that different from what is taught in other colleges, but the way they are taught, by who they are taught, and how those courses are then evaluated, right? So for example, in one of the courses, which is on data science, right? Students are actually asked to go into the industry, right? find a client, like maybe a small business, it could be an Uber driver, it could be at a small hotel, it could be an Oyo hotel, and utilize all the data science skills that they've learned, and try to help that client improve the bottom line, top line operations, right? And then the client is the one that grades them, not the faculty. Right?
Yeah.
It's not a problem set that they have to solve. I think they don't learn anything from problem sets. So I think that's what we have done in Masters Union, which is make learning sort of come alive. And I think that is why we were able to sort of stand against when interviews came, our students were able to sort of crack the same interviews that IIM candidates crack.
So also I'm sure you must have been bored at some point in your life sitting listening to a professor lecture. And when do you think Masters Union has sort of broken away from that idea of boring lectures?
We actually have a rule of no lectures, right? At least as much as possible. There are certain courses that can only be taught via, you listening to somebody, right? So for example, a very initial course on accounting, you'll have to sort of go down to the basics, you'll have to sort of go through the skills, right? So those are fine. But once we get into more intermediary and advanced skills, we believe that you can learn much better by doing, right? So we, in fact, for most of our courses, ask students to get real clients from the industry and work with them, rather than some mock tests or some problem sets or some Q&A in some chapter at the end of some book. And I think what's also interesting, I went to college. I was fortunate enough to go to college in the US, and it was a highly ranked business school, right? What we noticed there as well was that the learning was not hands-on, right?
It's still academic.
It's still academic, right? So I think in India we have a great opportunity to create something that's truly transformative when it comes to education, right? We have just 2.5 lakh PhDs for 36 million students who are enrolled in higher education. So that's a ratio of 1:200, 1:100, right? 1:150. So one PhD for 150 students. That's not sustainable. The UGC mandates that you have to have 1:10 ratio. That's not going to happen with PhDs, right? So we want practitioners, we need practitioners to come in. And because of that, in India, I think we have this opportunity to create something very cool.
So when Masters Union and KPMG decided to come together, what was the idea behind that? And why? Especially, I would want to ask you first, why did you decide that you want to tie up with Masters Union? Because, I mean, they've made, I'm the 3-year-old. And they've made it to the headlines for the amazing placements and packages and all of those things. But they're still new. They're not an IIM. Why did you decide to do this?
So I think when we first started speaking, and you're right, they're very new. I actually did not know about Masters Union. When we first started speaking, the first thing that jumped out at me was the basic philosophy or what they're trying to do. So at KPMG, we also have a learning services and an education sort of a business. And we are primarily targeting, and so far we have been targeting working professionals. And what we have been doing is we've been always, our I would say differentiator, if you will, was that practitioners will come and teach. So it's a consultants whose years of experience will come and teach someone, let's say on finance or accounting or forensics or whatever it is, right? We had never thought of, teaching like people just out of college.
Yeah.
So when Pratham and I first spoke, I think that kind of jumped out at me. They are trying to do the same thing, and I said, "Yeah, hey, this is a good opportunity." I think I would say there's alignment in what they wanted to do and versus what we were already doing. Right, so I think that's the only reason we came together.
And Pratham, clearly now that we know, this is not, it's not an experiment anymore. We've seen results. This worked because Masters Union is right in the line with the top B schools when it comes to placements and packages. So how good are those placements? We've been seeing headlines where it sounds sort of surreal, for something that's just started and for students to get such crazy good packages. How did that happen?
It's just because I think we focused on skills, right? And our masters put in the time and effort to make sure that the graduating students have all the skills required for which they themselves will eventually hire for, right? So I think first thing is that our masters were our recruiters, And I think that just solved half the problem right there.
And can you take me to the numbers once? How good, I mean...
So our first batch, the average placement number was around 29.12 lakhs, right? Which is in the same vicinity as IM, ABC, ISP, the established institutions. And the companies that hired, included, your main consulting companies, Bain, BCG, McKinsey, EY, KPMG, etc. And then a lot of our recruiters were actually startups, right? The 42 unicorns from last year, I think almost 50% of them were represented in the recruiters list. We also had large tech companies like Microsoft, Cisco, etc. Right? They also came in, and you would see that most of the recruiters were recruiters from where the masters also sort of came, right? So I think that was the biggest solution for us. Second was that I think most of the masters were teaching courses that they teach to their incoming recruits, right? So for example, when Microsoft recruits students from ISP or IIM Ahmedabad, they make them go through a 3-month process, right? Where they sort of tell them about Microsoft's policies and their practices and how product management works and how data science works in context of their company. But our students were already taught that beforehand. So when Microsoft came to recruit, I think our students had an unfair advantage, right? And I think finally, one thing that sort of is tied into the ethos of Masters Union is the fact that all of our courses are rooted in technology.
Right, okay.
Right? So even if you're studying, let's say, marketing, at least 20-25% of the course will talk about how technology sort of works with marketing, right? So you'll talk about product analytics, you'll talk about how data science can be used to, further optimize your marketing strategies, right? And because of that, I think students have good stories to tell in the interviews, right? When they say that, hey, I can marry business with technology, I think that's also the need of the hour. So I think
works, right? So when the two of you came together, what was the idea? I mean, was the idea to just continue what you already have, or were there new courses that were introduced? Did it lead to something new getting born?
So let me try and answer that question first. I think when Pratham came, first spoke to us, he wanted to do a postgraduate program in finance, right? And he had talked about audit, taxation, and analytics, I think accounting as well. But I think what we thought, it was slightly different, is that instead of talking of taxation and audit, which are very specialized fields, which only, let's say, CAs, etc., are usually involved. If we were to create an entry-level program for finance, what is it that we can do? And then there are two, so we thought of creating something in what is now called Master Camp in Applied Finance, is essentially a course in finance and accounting, which will help entry-level students or freshers get jobs in the FNA, finance and accounting. I keep saying these, acronyms. Yeah, finance and accounting jobs in companies all over the country. So that's and what we are basically what we wanted to do was to create the course curriculum in such a way that adds on to whatever they've learned in BCom or BBA. And we know, based on our experience with working with different clients, is that what is that gap which people spend a lot of money, the recruiters usually spend a lot of money after hiring freshers. They would spend a lot of money training them, even anything between 2 to 6 months people would train them. And so we know what are those gaps are. So we kind of created a curriculum which addresses those gaps. So that's what we thought we will create.
I'll just add to that. I think, so there are 36 million graduates enrolled in colleges in India, right? 36 million, that's 3.6 crores. Interestingly, 40 lakh are engineers, right? Can you imagine, or can you guess how many are in BCom and BBA combined? Just throw a guess.
It'll be really off.
Still.
I'd rather not.
So almost we have 55 lakh students enrolled in just 2 programs, BBA and BCom. And engineering, with all streams of engineering combined, MTech, BTech, this, that, is 40 lakhs. right? So BBA plus BCom is a lot more than, first of all, BTech. And if you combine BA on top of it, that's almost 95 lakhs. So we have 1.5 crore students who are enrolled in non-engineering, non-MBBS programs, right? These are hardcore business programs, right? Or BA is sort of a more generalist, right? Now, in engineering, we talk about how, the success ratio is so little, right? That only 5% graduates are employable. What do you think is the case with BBA and BCom grads?
Less than that.
Much less than that, right? In fact, in most colleges, there is no placement cell.
Oh.
Right? It's only the top 1 or 2% colleges where there is even a thought of placement cell, right? So BCom plus BBA plus BA, 1.5 CR people, they're completely lost when they graduate. That is the size of the problem.
Right.
The engineering, person not getting a job, that's a very small problem. The larger problem is here, right? That engineer will do something or the other with his life. The BCom grad and BBA grad, he has no real skills to back on, right? So I think what we wanted to do was make sure that this large 1.5 crore audience has a program which is completely hands-on. Engineering is still, even if taught miserably, still is a little bit of hands-on, right? You can at least visualize and but what to do with BCom? So I think the reason for us to come together at the end of the day was to make sure that we give a second chance to this large 1.5 CR audience, BCom, BBA, BA.
And this is how the master camp came into being.
And that's how, we decided that the practitioners from KPMG coming and teaching on a platform like Masters Union can create something very beautiful for these 1.5 CR people.
Right. Okay. So Pratham, my question to you is, this sounds great. I get it. And as a student, I might also need it. But why as a student do I then, break it down in details and structures for me. So, why should I, if I'm a student who's looking at options, why the master camp for me?
See, first of all, we have started with a master camp in finance, and we hope to start many other master camps, in analytics, in product management, in various other fields, business, sales, marketing, etc. But right now, let's talk about finance. See, if you're a BCom student, right, you probably had a thought that I want to get into finance and accounting space in the future, right? And eventually get into corporate finance, eventually, get into the CFO's office, maybe do trading on the side, start dabbling in crypto, right? That's over. The problem is that the BCom syllabus in the country is incredibly archaic, right? I would request your viewers to actually go, and many of them would be from DU, right? Just go see the last reprint of the BCom syllabus of Delhi University. I don't even want to tell on camera.
Decades old.
Yeah, it's decades old, right? But commerce has changed. Commerce is changing every 6 months, right? So what this program does, it takes all the BCom principles that people might have learned in their college and makes them relevant to today. Number one, it makes them immediately applicable, right? So because the practitioners are teaching, they teach in a way that the students, when they go into the industry, they'll be actually able to use those concepts that they've learned, right? They're not theoretical anymore, right? They're hands-on. Another aspect of the program, and I think Vijay ji can talk a lot more to it, is the fact that tools that are actually used in the industry, Power BI and Excel, etc., are actually taught at the level of the program. Very interestingly, in BCom, very few colleges actually teach Excel. You're laughing, right? Exactly. It sounds like a joke, but it is the case. It's incredibly unfortunate, right? And most importantly, I think, and kudos to KPMG for this vision, is that in the one-year program, what they've done is that they've put 6 months separate just for an industry immersive internship, virtual, right? That's where the student actually gets to apply all the learnings that they've had in the first 6 months into the program, into something real, right? And from there, hopefully placements will be a cakewalk, right? Because they already know all the skills, right?
Yeah, there's no, you're not, baby out of the bundle.
Correct. And right now, correct me if I'm wrong, I think after BCom, when you take students even from top colleges in Delhi University, you still have to make them go through a training process.
Yes, that's true.
Right? So you are actually paying to train them. So what was the college doing the entire time?
Yeah.
Right. So he's answered the learning bit of it and also a little bit on the hiring side. But if you could talk a little more. So the same question, why do I sign up for this course? And if I do, how does it influence my placement, my hiring prospects?
Okay, so I'll tell you what we are doing. As far as placement and hiring is concerned, I think Pratham is the best person to answer that. But just from a skills perspective, I'll give every time you talk to any corporate, they hire people, and then they end up having to train them on so many different things. And when I talk of so many different things, it is not just finance technical stuff. It is about the software that you're going to use. It is about analytics. And I'm not talking of very high-end analytics. I'm talking of very basic analytics. I'm talking of soft skills, which we talked about a little while ago. So this curriculum actually will talk about all those areas. And then the way we are looking at this is that, okay, fine, we'll give you those skills, and then it'll be immediately applicable, it may be immediately relevant, so the chances of getting a job vis-a-vis. So if you're sitting for an interview with these skills versus someone who has not got these skills, obviously you'll have some kind of an advantage, right? So that's one. That's I would say the major thing. And what we are trying to hopefully we are trying to do is that we will try to simulate the real experience of what it looks like when you get into a job. And our focus is not just getting the job. Our focus is also the way we have designed the course is that it's kind of will help you be successful even after you've joined. What will it take for you to move up the ladder once you get into a job, right? So that's the broad focus. And hiring and placements, I think Pratham can answer.
No, I think we've covered most of it, but at the end of the day, if the students already know what is expected in the job, I think getting a job is easy.
Because I'm sure it's a struggle. It's not just a struggle for the students, but also for those who are hiring, right?
Much more.
Because you want better individuals.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So my last question to the both of you is, whatever Masters Union is doing, clearly, whatever we've spoken so far, there's a gap that we've identified. And students are at the receiving end of it. They're facing the actual brunt of all of this. If I'm a student listening to the two of you, tell me, what do I exactly do to fix these things other than getting enrolled in this course? If I'm already at some point, if I'm already doing an MBA and I still want to get hired by, say, a KPMG, what do I do now that I'm already in it? So I think first and foremost, and I'm not just answering this from a KPMG standpoint, I'm just in general. The industry standpoint.
Yeah, from industry standpoint. I think if you've identified which area you want to be, I think there is some level of an honest assessment that you need to do, whether you have those skills or not. Right, and then that honest assessment, I mean, you could do a self-reflection. You could also ask your friends, you can ask your well-wishers, and they'll be able to tell you, whether you have that or not. Now, if you find that there is a skill gap, and then you figure out, okay, if there is a skill gap for you to get a job that you want, then maybe you can do some course, etc. Right? So maybe a short-term course, maybe a long-term course, whatever. So there is something that you could do to get a job. The other thing, and it's a little bit of a philosophical answer, which I feel is that while you should make a complete attempt to get the job that you want, I would say even if the first job that you get, it does not define your career, right? It is something that you start off with. Every job will have something or the other to teach you, and maybe in a couple of years you get some of those skills, or you learn which area you want to be. So every job will have the learning, and I think that's how you move up. Right. So that would be my 2 cents.
Right. And Pratham, the pyramid that we were talking about, right? So skills gap is something that he was talking about, but the top of the pyramid, the communications gap, the soft skill gap. Right. How do I deal with that? Because now there's literally, I'm in an IIM. Yeah. I'm at the ISB. Yeah. What more can I do now? Yeah.
I think it's interesting. We make our students, before they even come to college, we call it term 0, where we ask them to watch a bunch of movies on Netflix, right? And we sort of crafted that list very deliberately because...
Which are these, if you can share them? Okay. A few.
Yeah, sure. So I think, first of all, we asked them to watch Black Mirror. Okay. Right? What Black Mirror does is it basically makes you see yourself in the future and how technology might be messing with, exactly. So it makes you think critically of the present, right? Right now what happens is like most of the people are flowing with the flow. I think what Black Mirror lets you do is sort of stand on the shore and see how the flow is actually flowing.
True. Also jolts you a little.
Correct. So it just, I think, makes you think critically. So, soft skills is not just, as Vijay mentioned, about English, right? It's about how you think, right? Are you able to think critically? Are you able to question properly? Are you able to ask? The second thing you mentioned was structured thinking, right? So one thing that, again, we ask all our students to do before they come to college is that we ask them to, in groups of 5, start a business. Okay. Now, you have to work with 4 people you don't know at all, you've never met in person, and now you just have to start a business, right? And that means you have to brainstorm the ideas, you have to figure out who's going to do what, you have to figure out, without zero marketing budget, how to get customers, and once the customer comes, who's going to, right? So there's a lot of this teamwork required, but it's chaos, right? And we want students to experience that chaos so that when they come to class, right, they know exactly what was missing previously, right? And now they're given sort of these inputs on structured thinking, on how to sort of break down a problem in marketing, in finance, etc. And now they see what they should have done previously. Right? They always say, right, well, you should go to MBA once you have business experience, right? Because you know exactly what you should not do, and then sort of learn things that you can apply. So, this experience to chaos gives them a sense of the structured thinking. So, what I recommend is, to develop this structured thinking, do a lot of these projects outside of, your classroom. Don't stay, sort of enclosed in that 4 walls of classroom. Sort of, work in different clubs. Try to start your own small business. It's extremely easy to start a business now. Start a little crypto gig on the side. Maybe, trade stocks on the side. Do all of these things because they'll all sort of help you sort of align your thinking a little bit more as to how the industry expects them. Because in classroom, I think it's just about making sure that you get the exam correct. But that's not what real life is about.
And something to fix that communication thing?
I feel if you're in graduate school, or if you're an MBA, or if you're an undergrad, right, and your communication is weak, right, your English is weak, your grammar is weak, right, maybe you think in Hindi and speak in English, right, then that's why it comes out broken. I honestly feel it's a little too late, right? If you want to fix expression, if you want to fix English, grammar, accent, I think you have to do that at the school level, right? However, what I truly believe is that to be successful in life, you don't need to have very good English per se. I think what you need to have is structured thinking, right, as Vijay mentioned.
You can still make it work.
Exactly, right? So it's less about the accent, it's less about grammar, it's more about expression and structured thinking. Right? So I think, to be honest, we have tried, with our students, our average age is 24, right? And some of them come with a very thick accent, right? Or some of them come with just, mightily sort of flawed English, right? Grammar-wise. And we've tried to sort of, fix it. It's incredibly hard, right? So what we said, okay, we're not going to fix that. We'll try as much as possible, but we'll try to compensate for it with extremely well-structured thinking and good expression, right? So the idea is that can they take their argument and present it in a way that you understand, even if there was like a, the ka a ho gaya, and ka kuch aur ho gaya, that is all right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I think this was a lovely conversation. I'm sure our viewers would have taken a lot from this, and not just about the course, but also about what to do, what to look out for, things they should be doing better in the courses. I mean, how to pan out a career. Thank you so much. It's a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.